Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Tim Stewart from Visual Decisions, and I've spent decades helping companies transform their operations using cutting edge digital tools. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll explore an example smart manufacturing roadmap using the industry standard CESMII process and how you can implement that within your organization to create a more agile, efficient, and resilient operation. Let's get started. Let's start with the question of why do a roadmap? Well, as Stephen Covey once wrote, you should begin with the end in mind. This helps to give direction to your initiatives, create alignment within the organization, and minimizes the risk of failure. It also helps you to understand the potential value from pursuing a smart manufacturing initiative and what projects should be prioritized first based on that potential value. If you've decided that doing a roadmap is probably a good idea, then the Sesame process is a great way to go about it. It provides a solution agnostic approach so that you won't be led down a fixed path towards a particular vendor solution. It is an industry standard approach that allows you to benchmark your current state against a number of other companies. It also has a low cost, high value approach that can be done quickly with a relatively low resource requirement. As for why doing the roadmap with visual decisions, well, we've done more of them outside of than anyone else outside of Sesame, and frankly, we're pretty darn good at it. As mentioned earlier, one key reason to start with a roadmap is to minimize the risk of failure. There are many studies that show the majority of smart manufacturing pilots do not lead to the expected benefits. As an example, this study from Deloitte shows that only about a third of all pilots lead to a company being able to operationalize their efforts. In the presentation, we'll discuss how to minimize those risks. The simplest and most common way to approach a smart manufacturing initiative is also the least likely to succeed, and hence why there are so many initiatives that stall out. In this approach, companies think about a particular product or a solution they want to pursue. Perhaps they have a vendor pushing the idea. Maybe somebody went to a trade show and was impressed with the capabilities certain solutions provide. The most likely outcomes in this scenario are a set of disconnected point solutions that may or may not connect to the outcomes the customer was hoping for. The second approach uses a use case approach. These companies are starting with the incremental improvements that they are trying to achieve. Could be first pass yield or throughput or something else. This leads them to a set of solutions that support those use cases. This is a much better approach, but still leaves the possibility that each plant takes a different approach or that the quality, production, and supply chain teams are all working on their own use cases without connection to the other teams. This could still end up with a set of disconnected point solutions. The final approach is to begin with a value roadmap that begins with the overall outcomes the company is hoping to achieve. This gets connected to a comprehensive view of the upskilling process and technical changes that are required to enable the future state the company desires. This alignment across the organization and comprehensive plan to maximize the probability that the company achieves their desired outcomes. So before I go through the specific example results, here's a quick overview of the Sesame process. We focus on the three chevrons that are in blue: assess, focus, and roadmap. During the assess phase, we work with the customer to conduct the current state survey and assessment. We recommend sampling a very broad set of people across all business functions to get many different viewpoints of the current state of operations. Then we put together a presentation with an analysis of the data sliced by various dimensions of the respondents. In the focus phase, we conduct deep dive interviews with people across the organization to delve deeper into the current state, identifying both challenges and opportunities for the company. Once this is complete, we once again present the findings to the business along with a set of recommendations of potential initiatives that address the challenges and the opportunities. Also, in this phase, we put together a high level value proposition that looks at the possible impact of those initiatives. And finally, we conduct a future state survey that shows where people in the company would like to be in 3 years' time. Finally, we come to the building the roadmap itself. In this phase, we help the customer identify the high level goals across 6 different dimensions for the business. The team then selects the initiatives that will be pursued to achieve those objectives. Then they prioritize those initiatives into now, next, and future. And finally, they add definition to the initial set of activities to finish off the roadmap development. With that, all that said, let's dive into our example. Acme Manufacturing is a mid-size, discrete manufacturer in the automotive industry. They employ between 100 and 150 people across 2 different sites within the same city. As you may have guessed, this is a functional company with data and feedback that's been genericized and composited from many different roadmaps that we've completed at Visual Decisions. Here's the example finished product for Acme's roadmap process. So at a high level, we'll start with the executive summary for the Acme leadership team. Acme's completed the CESMII roadmap process with involvement from over 70 people through surveys, interviews, and workshops. It was found that Acme has an opportunity to grow profits by $11 million over the next 3 years. And that would be due to decreased labor expenses, reduced material costs, and reduced cost of poor quality. If the company's capacity constrained as opposed to market constrained, in other words, if they made more, they could sell more, then the opportunity could grow as high as $26 million in additional profits. And the sales could grow to increased effective capacity, decreased costs, and improved delivery quality and reputation within the marketplace. And these performance increases would be driven by new capabilities within the business. Real-time data collection from the shop floor that helps reduce downtime and improve quality, improve supply chain processes and the capabilities to reduce material costs, better production planning and inventory management, enhanced operational excellence capabilities to utilize those new system capabilities to drive continuous improvement within the organization. Heightened worker productivity through digital work instructions, upskilling, additional training, so forth. And then improved communication from leadership to create better alignment within the organization and to emphasize those points that they feel will drive new behaviors within the organization to become more data driven. So next, we present a picture across 6 different dimensions within the business. The first 3 are presented here: manufacturing strategy and leadership, manufacturing excellence culture, and data-driven operations. And we talk about the current state, current practices, and then we show what the future state is going to look like. And these are just meant to be illustrative of what those 2 different states will look like. So just as an example, under manufacturing excellence and culture, currently continuous improvement practices exist, but they're not followed everywhere. Manual data collection practices feed some improvement activities, but the data available for activities such as root cause analysis is often very high level, very incomplete, and lacks important pieces of context. After we go through this process over the next few years, the future state will look like this. Continuous improvement projects they widely engage the participants in utilizing automatically collected manufacturing data to minimize downtime, boost production rates, decrease process variability, enhance quality, and optimize overall performance. The next 3 dimensions are systems infrastructure and integration, optimizing workforce, and supply chain resiliency and agility. And just to give an example here, right now, underneath the workforce, training in many areas is primarily conducted through on the job mentoring, while work instructions for most shop floor tasks exist. They're not presented in a user friendly format, and it's difficult for the users to see those as they're doing the task. And additionally, there are limited systems in place to enhance worker capabilities. In the future, training will be more structured with thorough cross training programs in place. Highly visible digital work instructions enable employees to adapt quickly. And additionally, workers actively contribute to data collection efforts and engage broadly in those continuous improvement initiatives. So typically, this presentation would be done at the end of the roadmap process. So the UR here shows where we are as we do this presentation. We're right at the end of that roadmap process. And we're typically doing this presentation as we're heading out to start the execute and sustain. As kind of the final piece of the overview here, this is what the actual roadmap looks like in terms of the rollout. And so in 2025, we're going to focus on communicating the strategic plan, integrating that into people's objectives, and establishing a center of excellence for smart manufacturing within the organization. Additionally, we'll look at improving and broadening the continuous improvement or operational excellence initiative, and really focus on quality process improvements as well. We'll start to implement real-time machine monitoring. We'll do a lot with business intelligence and advanced analytics. We'll start work on digital work instructions, the training and cross-training programs, and sourcing and procurement initiatives. As we roll into next year, many of those same things will roll into next year as well. For instance, continued focus on operational excellence and quality process improvements and sourcing and procurement initiatives. But we'll have additional things that we start to look at, like the unified data platform, integrating SPC data collection from the shop floor to the machines so that we're automatically collecting that information, as well as taking that SPC data and pushing that back into the business systems. We'll also look at implementing real-time quality monitoring on the shop floor. And then as we move forward into 2027, we'll start to look at predictive maintenance capabilities, advanced forecasting, planning, and scheduling as well. And then there are things that we don't fit within our 3-year horizon that we still wanted to note for the future, such as ergonomic improvements within the workstations, video analytics for some of the manual processes within the business, enhanced design for manufacturing integration, and then energy management solutions as well. So at this point, we'll switch to kind of a chronological view of how the process has flowed to this point. And we'll start with the survey results. So when we did the current state survey, we sent 82 invitations out across 12 different roles within the organization. 73 people responded and 9 just didn't have the time. Very typical. Broad range of responses within and across different departments, and that is also very typical. The consensus opinion is that the company's at or near a collaborative level in 4 areas, and I'll get more into what that means in a minute. And then the consensus is that the company's lagging a bit at the aware level when it comes to manufacturing strategy and leadership and systems infrastructure and integration. So that's what this looks like on a chart. So again, we have our 6 different dimensions that we work with within this initiative. And we rate the answers to the survey across 5 separate levels, going from reactive to aware to collaborative to proactive to adaptive. And there's a set of, it's a fairly short survey. It's about 25 questions long. And within each one of those questions, there's 5 separate answers. And each of those answers represents these different levels of the current state of the operations. And when we summarize all of that across all of the different people that took the survey, these orange dots represent that average response across the questions and respondents. Now, if we dive into a little bit more detail, we can see that if we break this out by different role group, there's a wide variety of different responses, and people have very differing opinions about where the business currently stands. And again, this is extremely typical. We see this at every single customer that we work with, and that's actually good. I mean, people in sales may not have the same view of where operations is at with the people that are actually on the shop floor doing the work, the operators themselves, versus people that are in engineering working with production from a design for manufacturing point of view. And so the fact that there are different opinions is good. It's good to have that mixture. Um, in this particular case, what was very interesting was that if we look at the roles of operations and supply chain and quality that are pretty much directly involved with production versus the business side, engineering, finance, HR, and so forth, we saw a significant gap in between where the people that are in the field doing the work versus the people that are more support functions have a very different opinion about the current state of the operations. So uh, some of those things come out as very interesting insights as we work through the data from the surveys. And then later on in the project, we'll do a future state assessment. And within that future state assessment, we're asking people to put their mindset 3 years from now and look at if we've done a lot of these different initiatives, where should the business be at by that time? And so what we can see is we can start to map out what is the growth that needs to happen within the operation to take manufacturing strategy and leadership from being aware to being proactive. So the next step after we do that current state survey is to go into deep dive interviews. And we can do these within groups. We can do them individually. We can work with one team at a time, one department at a time. We can work across different departments, and they all have their pros and cons for um, the benefits that you see from the cross discussions and so forth. So there's no one way that's right to do that, but we get very interesting and very good results no matter what. So within Acme, as a summary of all the different conversations, we came up with a list of current challenges. And I've found that these challenges are very common across a lot of the mid-sized manufacturers that I work with. So first off, very inconsistent lean practices and process standardization. People, have an idea of what those lean practices look like, but they're very inconsistently followed. And process standardization is a goal as opposed to something that's there today. Um, there's limited visibility to production and quality data. Typically, it's collected by hand. It's not very well contextualized, and it's pretty inconsistent in terms of what level of data is collected. There are communication and coordination gaps between the different teams. Engineering and production may not work very well together. There's maybe not a great process for feeding back that production information into the design team so that future iterations of the products can utilize that information from the shop floor. There may be limited exchange of information between sales and production as well. Um, there can be reporting and data accuracy challenges. There are very often data silos across different departments that result in inconsistencies for what production and quality and finance think about the process today. Supply chain issues will very often impact that production efficiency. So, late orders coming from suppliers, supply chain issues that we've seen in the past few years can very much impact production, and supplier quality issues can also have that impact. And then it's very common to see workforce and infrastructure constraints as well, whether that's lack of workers or skills gaps, and lack of cross training, leading to bottlenecks and reducing some of the flexibility that you have on the shop floor. Material flow issues, uh, infrastructure from a computer point of view or a network point of view can also be constraints. And then aging equipment and some delayed capital investments can also contribute to that frequent downtime and production slowdowns. So this is at a top level summary across all the different departments. Within each group, we'll have very detailed information about quality and production and so forth. And we'll have a summary of the information that we get from those groups as well. I'm not going to go through all the details here, but just wanted to show that we have that level of depth within the analysis, and have information here about quality, production, and operations that are seeing, unplanned downtime affecting the schedules, limited visibility into supplier lead times, product or preventive maintenance programs not always being followed rigorously, supply chain disruptions, heavy reliance on spreadsheets and kind of legacy data tracking and planning capabilities. Engineering, DFM principles are not consistently applied across products. Engineering changes aren't always communicated effectively. Communication between engineering and operations could be improved in many places. Standardization and continuous improvement is not always systematically captured, and so forth. Operational excellence teams, or just the initiative itself, if the team isn't in place. A lot of the adoption is lean exists within the company, but it's not really consistently applied. The systematic elimination of different inefficiencies is often lacking. There's critical expertise is not fully documented, so knowledge retention becomes an issue as some of the aging workforce starts to leave the operation. Problem solving and root cause analysis is often very reactive rather than proactive problem prevention. Within supply chain, lead time fluctuations from suppliers can impact the production flow. You have inconsistent supplier performance that may not be tremendously well documented. Within production planning and scheduling, orders fluctuate and require agile scheduling that isn't easy to do within spreadsheets. And there's a lack of real-time tracking and feedback into that planning process as well. From a finance perspective, there's limited visibility to how costs build up across the process. There's, from a capital investment perspective, machines are not heavily invested in many cases, and a lot of that downtime that results from that impacts the return on investment that the organization is seeing overall. And the high WIP levels, high finished good levels, high raw material levels tie up capital, and at the same time, you may not have the right things in stock when you need them, and so you have stockouts that are impacting sales. From a sales perspective, there are growth opportunities for most all of these companies, but on-time performance and or quality issues may jeopardize some relationships and future revenue. You might have communication gaps between sales and operations. For orders that or for companies that have to do quoting, that's often a very difficult process with a lot of data gaps that exist and assumptions that are being made, and the limited visibility into operational cost drivers that uh, make that pricing strategy difficult. Now, as part of our conversations and all these deep dive interviews, one of the questions that we very much like to ask is a magic wand. What is the single change that you could make within the business if it was free and instant? And the answers that we get to this question are often very, very illuminating in terms of what would make that huge step change for the business. And is it actually possible to do those things? And so it may not be free and instantaneous, but if it could be put in place within this horizon that we're looking at for the project, then is it something that would be worth pursuing? And so that's a question that leads to a lot of really good analysis. So as we come out of these deep dive interviews and have the current state survey in hand and so forth, that usually leads us into a set of potential smart manufacturing initiatives. And for discrete manufacturers, you know, that is often very common. Things like being able to improve operational efficiency through real-time monitoring, advanced planning and scheduling, better quality through more endemic SPC, real-time quality monitoring, digital twin capabilities, and so forth on down. Supply chain optimization, workforce empowerment, some of the unified data platforms and advanced analytics to drive better decision making. These things are common across most of the different companies that we've worked with. So then we get to the point of looking at the business case that we put together for the customers. And what we start with is that list of potential initiatives. And we start to link that into tactical improvements elements and strategic improvement elements. The tactical elements are things like improving throughput, reducing waste, improving operational stability, reducing unplanned downtime, things like that. Whereas the strategic elements are more things like increased decision-making speed, improved agility and responsiveness, enhancing the operating model for the business, optimizing the manpower, and increasing revenue. And so different points of view, but what we try to do is to link what is happening from the initiatives to those improvement capabilities. And that starts to give us an idea as we go through the analysis on the financial side of how much we're going to be able to address the losses for the business. And so the next step is to look at a set of base financials, and it's pretty straightforward in terms of the input that we're looking for. You know, essentially, what are the sales? What are the fixed costs? What's my labor cost? What's my raw material cost? What's my energy cost? And what's my cost of scrap? And then if I look at the loss areas for the business, I'm looking at if we think about OEE, what's my rate loss? What's my availability? And what's my quality loss? And then I can look at my cost of scrap. I can look at my cycle time, how much touch time I have from the beginning to the end of the process. What's my energy waste within the operation? And then looking at the cost per unit from a raw material point of view. Then if I look at my future state, if we did all of those different initiatives, what is my potential savings from getting all of that done? And so if I could cut my rate loss in half, reduce my unplanned downtime by 25%, make a significant dent in my quality issues, my scrap costs, improve my cycle time, my touch time, reduce the energy waste that I have, and reduce my material cost. And doing so by looking at these different initiatives and how it impacts those different drivers. If I can do that, then I can start to look at what is the benefit that I'm going to gain from that rate loss? What is the benefit from reducing the unplanned downtime and so forth? And once I take those 7 different areas, I can look at what is the complete summary of the potential savings that I could see. Now, for most businesses, they are conservative and don't look at the possibility of increasing sales. But if you increase your capacity, if you reduce your cost base, if you improve your quality and your quality reputation within the marketplace, usually there's some opportunity to grow sales as well. And so we look at the possibilities of if you're using that capacity that you're freeing up to make additional parts as opposed to reducing the number of hours of labor time that you're putting into things, then you can have a much more significant impact on the margin of the business. Excuse me. So then, if we start to look at our six different areas of leadership and so forth, how do we start to allocate those improvements in those different loss areas across our initiatives within those six dimensions of the business? And that starts to help us break out for each one of those different initiatives in that particular dimension. What is the value that we would get from there? And that will help drive some of the road mapping process as we go downstream. Now, other potential benefits that aren't included in the roadmap process, but we could document as potential benefits for Acme manufacturing. There could be multiple impacts across the income statement, balance sheet that aren't directly incorporated within there. Things like overtime, the actual maintenance expenses, warranties or penalties or returns from the customer, you, different indirect labor or indirect material impacts and so forth could all be additional benefits that the company would receive that are beyond that 11 million that we actually documented, as well as functional benefits of on-time delivery, OEE, schedule adherence, inventory turns, etc., and more qualitative benefits of the company and brand reputation, additional innovation, agility and resilience within the marketplace, employee retention, and so on. And then there's innovation potential around going beyond the current business model as well, and things that the company could do to really impact that agility and rapid response to change, moving into new markets, the ability to capture perishable demand if that opportunity exists, resilience to general economic changes, overall technology changes, supply chain disruptions, etc. All right, so that brings us through that second chevron at this point, and we move into the road mapping process itself. And at a high level, this is what the roadmap itself looks like. So across these six different business areas, we look to set an objective within each one of those. And so for manufacturing strategy and leadership, we're trying to align the organization. Within manufacturing excellence and culture, we're trying to improve the manufacturing processes and so forth. And as we go through the process from beginning to end, it begins with the consultants, such as we have at Visual Decisions, doing most of the work. So as we run the survey and so forth, we're putting together the presentation around that. We do the deep dive interviews and we collate the information there. But as we go further through the process, we're trying to have the customer really take ownership of the initiative as we go. And so every customer that I've worked with has built their own roadmap, and I just facilitate that process. And so these are things that Acme Manufacturing has listed as the business objective within those areas, and then they come up with names for the different programs. And then we go back to that list of potential initiatives, and we say which of those actually kind of make the cut within each one of these different areas. And are there additional things that we should think about at this point that will help us drive that business objective? Then we can go back and look at what is the annual impact that we think we're going to be able to achieve based on our analysis from earlier. And for each one of these different initiatives, we start to think about the timeline. Is this something that we need to do now because it doesn't have any prerequisites? It is high impact. It's relatively quick to achieve. We have the resources available. The business functions are ready for that initiative and so forth. And so we're going to, put this first on the agenda. And next in the timeline is probably, if you think about a 3-year timeline, now, next, and future. I like to think of this as, the first year, the second year, and the third year, and breaking up the initiatives across that timeline. And so we try to consider resource constraints. We try to think about different dependencies between the different projects and so forth, and lay out a plan that's doable for the customer. And then for the now actions that are part of the initiative, we go through and we work with the customer to really detail out what is the strategic purpose of that program, what are the different initiatives within there, what's the scope of that initiative, who are the people that are responsible, and does that initiative have multiple projects within it? And get all of that documented. And once that's all complete, we end up back at this graphic, which shows what that calendar looks like as we move forward. And note that this is the plan that we have as of today. And as we move forward into 2026, 2027, and so forth, there will probably be new technologies that become available. The business will be in a different place. Perhaps additional systems would make sense to incorporate into this plan. Perhaps there are things that no longer make sense that we want to take off of there. And so, as we look at the next steps, one of the things that CESMII has built into their program is to look at this as a loop. This is something that's not meant to be a one-time activity. This should be something that takes place on, at least an annual basis, so that you're coming back, at the start of 2026, and you're looking at what was our roadmap from last year, what have we already accomplished, what do we need to kind of shift into, the next year because it didn't get done. What are the things that we want to add? What are the things we want to subtract? And really reset what that plan looks like. So as we look at coming out of this presentation, we're now in that execute and sustain phase. And as we look at that, now it's time to start doing, software selections, really looking at, how you make those improvements to your OpEx program, things like that. So that's what the roadmap process looks like. I want to thank everybody for your time today. If you want to reach out to me, if you have questions, please do so. I can be reached at tim@visualdecisions.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to talk to you about where you're at within your company and if a roadmap would help you out. Thank you very much.